the sentence you just said before that about identifying with the sensation. Say that one again. Tell me what you said.
I said that there is a sensation that feels like me looking or perceiving things as a
Yeah.
center.
Yep. Okay.
And he asked me, can a sensation speak? Does the sensation say that? Or this is an interpretation? And I said it's an interpretation, but it seems that it's applied to the sensation all the time.
Say that last little bit again. It seems that
the interpretation is just being applied to the sensation all
right.
the time.
Yes.
And there was an expectation or an assumption that if this interpretation falls away or this identification with the sensation, then the sensory input or the visual field, for example, would be standing on its own, like it's not being perceived with a sensation addition to the sensory experience.
Yes. Yes. Okay. Yeah.
And so is this assumption wrong to expect that the visual field can stand in its own? Like I don't have to hold this sensation as an anchor to the experience.
You don't have the sensation as an anchor to the experience. You have the interpretation of the sensation. That's what we call that's what got me excited. You can see that the interpretation you apply to the sensation is what gives it meaning. That's where you get the idea that it's a self from. That's where you get the idea that what you're observing is the world out there. It's all because of the interpretation you put on the sensation. Would you agree that the sensation itself contains no actual information? Is that your experience?
The interpretation, the sensation feels like stuck together. I can't
Yes, I
separate
got
them.
that. Yeah. But where does the interpretation come from?
Yeah.
The interpretation doesn't come from the sensation, does it? It comes from the ideas about the sensation. And as you say, yes, they seem to be stuck together. But appreciating that you've got two things going on. You've got a sensation, which is nothing more than a sensation. It is a sensation in all its glory, which is a sensory input, just a pure sensory input. It's nothing more than a biochemical stimulation. No matter which sense it comes in, that sense is stimulated, and that's what is happening. You're getting a sensation from the sense. The word sensation tells you that, it's the senses that are stimulated that's giving you the sensation. So this is an old one that I used to use a lot. If you feel a sensation on the back of your neck there, it's on the back of your neck. You don't see it, you just feel it. What happens? You immediately jump to the conclusion that, say, a mosquito or some insect has landed on your neck, and you do this. But it's the interpretation of that sensation, which comes from the mind, that says there's something there I need to get rid of. I need to do something about it. It's the mind that is the interpretation. So we're not talking about the sensation. The sensation will come in for whatever reason the sensation is triggered. Okay, now that can be a bit tricky, but that's the next step. Let's not jump there yet. Right at the beginning, what we've got is we've got a sensation, and then we've got an interpretation of that sensation. And that interpretation, I'm betting that you can see, is mental. That interpretation is thoughts.
I had an experience with the sound, and there was two interpretation to the sound, and I was able to flick between the two, and I imagined the sound one way or the other, and it was really fascinating. The sound was, I can hear it as water in the sink, or I can hear it as boiling oil, and I can swear I can hear both at the same time.
Yeah.
And it was really, but I couldn't hear the sound without one of the interpretation.
Yes.
There must be an interpretation to the
Yes,
sound.
that gets to another step again. That's another really interesting one. Now, let me say, you can experience it without the interpretation, but that is a really, really tricky one to get to, right? Because you've got a whole lifetime of conditioning where you have learned, your experience has told you that you need to understand what's going on. You need to interpret. And so consequently, the brain is really good. It's a predictive organ. It'll take the smallest amount of information it requires to jump to a conclusion. That's the nature of the brain. It's an energy saving process. And it does it very, very well. So it'll use your previous experience. It'll use what it knows in terms of knowledge that's been floated around, and it'll use whatever it can get in order to jump to a conclusion as quickly as possible. Your job in this case is to separate the two, to separate what you are hearing or whatever the sensation is from the description that the mind brings to it. You don't have to keep doing this. This is just an exercise for you to appreciate that there is something we call real, or what is actual, and then there is concept. And what you're doing is, what everybody does, is you're marrying the two together. You're taking what is actual, that is the input from the sensation, and you're marrying it up with an explanation or a description, and you're calling it one thing, but it's not, it's two things, definitely two things. And so this is the trick. So if you decide that you can't hear that sound, that's a beautiful example. If you can't hear that sound without the interpretation, then you need to go on a journey of discovery to work out how to do that. So what you need to be able to do is to ignore the mental input that says, oh, it's either boiling water or it's boiling oil, right? Because when you say it's boiling water, you get an image. And when you say it's boiling oil, you get a different image. Right? And so you're flicking between the two. And then when you merge them together so that you can't tell the difference between them, then you're going to get some kind of a composite image. And that image may not be a visual image, but it's certainly an image of what it is that you're doing. But what that does is that stops you from hearing the actual sound in its raw data form. So to get beneath, to flick away the descriptions, keep flicking them away just say to yourself, go away, and come back to what the actual sound is, just the sound. And what you've got to do is you've got to sink down below the word level. Right? And this is what the whole thing of what we're really talking about here is getting out of that layer where language and words define what the world is, and get below that to know of, just to know of. You don't have to live there. You're not going to live there. You can't live there. You can only visit it. But just get to below the word level of where everything normally operates, down to the raw data of what's coming in. And once you can all you've got to do is separate those once, just to see that there is this thing called direct experience. And then there's everything else, which is concept that we apply. And once you can do that, that's the first feta stuff. Once you can separate those two things, then you can start to appreciate that what lives in that world of concepts is the self, and a whole lot of other things that you'll get to understand or get to meet, if you like, afterwards. But the first we have to do is to separate the two and appreciate that there is this thing called direct experience, where there are no thoughts involved. There is just pure sensory input. It's pretty exciting, and you're right on the edge of it. You are so close, because you can see that thoughts are doing what thoughts do. You can see that that's where the interpretation of what you're experiencing is, but you just haven't been able to see that those two can be separated. That's all. Does that make sense to you?
Yeah.
You're right on the edge, so close, so close. You've got your toes in the water. Hello, everybody else.
Zooming in into the sensations and the sensory experience in general feels relaxing, feels
Yes,
doesn't require thoughts.
absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's not to say that certain kinds of sensory input wouldn't create a stress reaction. Certainly, if you've got a startling explosion close to your head from behind, that without thinking about it, you would be startled. But generally speaking, all of the stress comes from the conceptual side. All of the anxiety, all of that contraction, all of that fear, all comes from the concept side, never from just the pure sensation. But don't stress about it. Be relaxed. Just go on, Lennon.
I think something similar happened to me when I was doing this exercise to feel into the body with closed eyes, and I could feel the sensation that I would usually label as my feet a bit without the label, and also my head, but I could in the beginning not delabel up and down, I think, or like above and under. And then at some point it turned around, and then it felt like as if my feet were above my head. So this is an interpretation, of course, but it kind of showed me the arbitrariness, that it could be felt like this or that. So I felt a bit confused afterwards.
Yeah. Yeah, this is definitely something worth mentioning, and that is that as we investigate these things, we can get you've got to be careful not to put yourself in a dangerous situation. For example, you would never do any of this stuff while you were driving. If you suddenly lost depth perception, even if it's only a temporary, it would always only be a temporary thing. But if it happened, you know, you might well run into the car in front of you because you don't know how far away it is. So, you know, or if you're walking, you know, you might walk into a pole instead of going around it. So these things are things to just be aware of, you know, do it in a safe situation when you're playing around with this. We get so good at using the mind to navigate the world that we don't even realize we're doing it. We just do it unconsciously, you know, and we do it brilliantly. The mind, the brain is absolutely brilliant at how it does these kind of things, but we also get locked into it. So we think it's the only way things are, but of course it's not, as we will discover. Yeah.
I noticed something coming up, Vince, which was around control. And it was when a tradesman came to visit and did a job, and I kind of stepped back and away and into another room, you know, just let him do what I thought he needed to do. And then I heard a crash bang. And I thought, oh, no, I'm going to leave him to it. And then, you know, when he left, what I found out was that he dragged something across my wooden floor and left a big scratch. And the mind immediately said, you know, if you were in there controlling it, that wouldn't have happened. So it was just to notice that, you know, when something went wrong, then I thought, oh, you know, the mind just thought, you know, like I told you, you should have been controlling that, and it wouldn't have happened, which I know is not true, but it's just a habit of the mind. It's like letting go of the control, yeah, you know, and allowing things to happen, even if they appear to be negative.
Yeah, sure. And the brilliant thing was, you know, yeah, and it's interesting, isn't it? You know, there you are, quite clear in the knowledge, I was going to say, quite clear in the knowledge that shit happens, and whether you were there or not, that accident probably would have occurred. So you can see that that's the case, but at the same time, the mind is saying, yeah, you should see, you should have been there, you should have been there. So what we have is this paradox. We've got this contradiction that goes on. But here's a really important point, and this is a really valuable point. Right? You saw the moment that the mind came up with that, you saw that was just a mental story that really didn't relate to reality at all. You saw that. So what you also saw was that it was just some kind of a remnant. It was just a habitual thing. So that particular thing hadn't been triggered before, and so therefore it hadn't been seen the light of day, and therefore hadn't been examined and dismissed, kind of thing. Now that might come up again a few more times, but essentially it's on the way out because you saw it happen. So this does happen. This does happen, that what we get is we get remnants of stuff that just haven't been triggered before, that turn up quite out of context. The moment they're there, we can see, well, that's a stupid one. And usually there'll be a sense of humor. There'll be a laugh involved with it. You know, it'll seem quite funny that there it is. It's a paradox, you know, it shouldn't be there. And so consequently that's it. But that's just part of the whole thing. That's brilliant. I just love the way that you saw it and that you could immediately put it into proper context. Yeah, good stuff. Yeah.
What's the difference between judgment and discernment?
The feeling that goes along with it. So a judgment, there's always going to be a feeling of, I know, it's about you. A judgment's about you. I judge something. I have an opinion, a strong opinion. It's like I am taking a stance. I know something. A discernment is about whatever is being discerned. It's like it's all of the energy is in what is being discerned, so to speak. So it's much more. There's not such an obvious ownership. This is just what comes to mind. I mean, it's of course it's all open to interpretation. So judgments and opinions is usually, well, it's about ego. You know, whereas discernment is much more, how can I put it, objective, maybe? What do you think? What's the difference? Oh, go on, Eric. Yeah.
I think maybe judgment has more feeling in it. I had this experience 2 nights ago. I just remembered that I had I was actually, yeah, I missed my daughter's birthday. I forgot, and I was going to sleep, and then I was really tired, and I woke up and I realized I missed my daughter's birthday because it was April 15th. Her birthday was on the 11th. And I said, oh my God. So I called her, and then in the middle of the night, I woke up with this feeling of guilt. My brain said that, but then I realized what I experienced was a stomachache. Was it because I ate something? You know, something was causing that. Was it really a feeling of guilt, or was it just a stomachache? And I guess discernment would be that something was going on in my belly. My brain kind of came up and felt like it was guilt, but what was it really? Just a feeling in my belly.
Yeah. So I would agree that there is going to be emotion involved in a judgment or an opinion, and that's not an imperative with discernment. So had you just had discernment, Eric, that you would have just discerned a sensation in the belly, and then the story arrives that it's because I ate too much. And then that might ring true because there's a certain sensation of distension or something in the belly that might back up that story. Or then there's another feeling that it could have been that was guilt about the remembering, you know, that not about the remembering, about what you had forgotten. But where did that remembering thought come from? That's amazing. You know, what triggers it? And it's amazing, isn't it? You know, days later, 3 days later, and then into the mind comes this thought: daughter birthday. Boing.
What happened was a tax day is the 15th, and the birthday is just embedded in my mind, April 11th. And I just wasn't, because we're involved in this getting ready for a trip. And so I've been thinking about all things I've got to do, you know, and get ready. And it was the 15th, and then the imperative of doing taxes, and then putting them together. And then it just, you know, It came all of a sudden.
Mm.
But the waking up at night, I think inside the feeling was generated in a dream or something. So when I woke up, that's the feeling I had. But then the thinking came, and I was thinking, what really, what, I just have a stomach ache. Somewhere, some part of my brain in the sleeping made the story about feeling guilty or something.
Mm. So again, like with Eloise, you and Ramiz, as far as partly, it was that you saw the two things as separate. You saw the sensation, and you saw the stories that arrived. And for you, they weren't glued together. You got able to go, oh, well, maybe there's actually a couple of stories there, you know?
Yeah. Well, what was interesting was later on in the day, I felt such a good, peaceful feeling. I don't know why. I was just going through the whatever it was, just, yeah, felt really peaceful.
Mm.
Something I noticed recently about when I was a kid, when I watch a movie, and I'm immersed in the movie and I'm in love with the character or whatever, and the movie finishes and I'm still like in the mood of the movie, and I feel like I'm embodying the character even, or his facial expressions, and there's a subtle image that I am this character, the body language, the sense of the character, and it's like I'm completely different person. I just noticed that it's the same as being whatever me is. It's just a subtle image and a sensation with facial expressions, maybe, or it's just a composition of all these things.
Yeah. What comes to mind is the next step. The next step after seeing that is to see what that stuff rests on. So there was some attraction to you, to that movie character for you. And so what you interpreted as happening for that person had some significance for you. So you're seeing two things here. You're seeing, well, you're seeing lots of things, but two main things. You're seeing that there is this character in the movie, and then there is this character called Ramiz, and they're both the same. They're both actors on a stage. But there's a relationship between those two characters, and that's where some juice is for you. What the reason, some of it will be really obvious. The reason why you imagined, how you put it, you imagined a kind of a synchronizing between the two characters, between Ramiz and the person in the movie. But that synchronization, that merging, even if it's only a mental thing, that was based on very likely your interpretation of the movie character as a way of, how can I put it, a way of, it's how you would like to be, how you would like Ramiz to be. In some way, there was a distinct relationship between the two characters. Yeah, that was all muddy, wasn't it? But
I think what you are talking about, Vince, it's about projection. Like if there is, in a movie, there is always many characters, but somehow we like one or we identify with one. But often we do this because we identify with the character that we want to become. So we project outside aspects that are in us into the character, and after we imagine to be the character. And the character that you don't like and it's awful, it's the same, but in the opposite side, things of you that you don't want to see. And so you want to avoid this character and be near of this one. I think this is projection, when we project into a movie, into character, into the movie. But I think what is very interesting with movies is, like you said, Rami, is like we get immersed in it, right? This is really about how in group discussions about awakening and non-duality, it's about how many concessions, how many concessions that we want to do. So, for example, in a way, the character in a movie is real, right? It exists. It is real. It has some reality. But when you look closely, you see there's just sound and light. There is no really something there to see or to experience. It's really an imagination. But part of your mind willingly forget that is reality to enjoy the show and have emotions and have a trip. So that's what we pay money to forget that it's only a movie, to experience some reality, some experience. So in a way we can say the movie is real. It's a real movie. Have emotion, a real experience. Everything is real in a movie. But when you step back, you say, no, but it's true that it has some reality, but in fact it's just light and sound. It's not happening. And it's the same with the human experience. If you step back, you say, oh yeah, it has some reality. It exists. It is real. But the reality is not a person. It's not an individual. It's not matter. It's something else. So there is the different kind of stepping back, and sometimes can be confusing in groups, because depending on where you come from, the answer have different levels of concessions to reach where you are. That's why it's very, I think it's very good to ask question and to hear the answer, because the answer that you are hearing right now is specifically for you. And whatever you understand has nothing to do with the one who speaks and the one who asks you the question. Because the way you understand the question and the way you understand the answer, it's all in your own mind system, in your own belief, in your own interpretation.
I wanna ask about consensions you were talking about, but I don't know what exactly. So can you talk more about it?
Concession. Okay. Do you know the concept of Santa Claus? Yes? Okay. So we can say that Santa Claus is real, right? It's a real story. If I speak to someone about Santa Claus, I can talk about it. He's red, right? He lives in the Pole North. He do this, he do that, and we can speak for hours. And we can disagree, we can agree, we can make picture, we can do many things about the concept. So it has some existence. Yes, Santa Claus. But when you look closely, there is no Santa Claus, right? But there is a reality in that story. If we see a Santa Claus on the street and I tell you this is Santa Claus, you can say yes, but you can also say, oh, this is just a man walking with a red cloud, right? So this is a little bit the concessions. Like if someone come to me and really believe about Santa Claus, and when I start to tell him is it real, and he got a lot of emotions, and maybe I say okay, so Santa Claus is real. Okay, so where do you live? Did you find his plane? Did you see him? You see, so often in teachings, and we try to reach people where they are, where they believe they are. And often, but not everyone does that. Some people are very straightforward and say there's nothing, there's no emotion, there's anything. So, but I think it's interesting to name it, because often we can see within us, we make concessions without knowing it in our relationship also. If a children come to me and believe in Santa Claus, I will get into it. Oh, Santa Claus, maybe, it's okay, it exists. I will play with him. I will make it as if it is real. But in my mind, I know that it's just a game. It doesn't matter, really. But what is more tricky is when we do this with our relatives, with our brother, our father, our companion, our friend, because we want to relate to them. We reach them where they are, but after it's often we cannot get confused ourselves after. I don't know if it's clear.
Does the concession is applied to playing a character or being identified as a person? Is it like a choice?
I don't see the connection with choice.
So just using your Santa Claus example, which is great. What about when the kid first gets old enough and the other kids at school or wherever tell him, no, there's no such thing as Santa Claus. He's not real. But he comes home and he pretends that Santa Claus is still real because he still wants to get the presents. He still wants to play the game. He still wants to.
That's great. That's great, Vince. Yeah.
That moment, that period of time when he knows there's no Santa Claus, but he's still going to behave as if there is. It's like he's lying to himself in a way, but it's all very lighthearted, of course, with Santa Claus. But there is that willing suspension of disbelief for the sake of an outcome, which is what we do in the movies. We willingly put aside any, we don't keep reminding ourselves, oh, it's only just a movie. We willingly put that aside to immerse ourselves in it. It's like we carry a paradox with us, but is that what you're talking about with?
Yes, exactly. It's very good. I never thought about the kid that keep lying because he's afraid that Santa Claus will not bring the gift. It's beautiful. It is like this. It's aim for control. It's very good. Look, Rami, you see that control, it's a lie, but you keep lying to yourself because you are afraid that your life is going astray if you let go of control. But you are not in control right now. This is the whole. So it's exactly the same with Santa Claus. Even if Santa Claus stopped to exist for you, your parents will still give you gifts in Christmas. It has nothing to do about believing Santa Claus. It has nothing to do about Santa Claus at all. It's something else. The gifts come from another dimension. It has nothing to do with Santa Claus. And control is the same. Once you believe, like, your life is the experience is the way it is, and when you see clearly that there is no control, your experience keep going the way it was, because there is nothing changed.
So I wonder if you could even reverse that around and say, you really do know that you don't have control, but that's a belief you will suspend for the sake of operating in this society. So you will pretend like you have got control. And then of course you start believing that it's real. You know, it's like somebody who's so deluded that they actually believe they're the character in the movie. Instead of just suspending disbelief while they're watching the movie, they leave the movie theater and they're still that character, and they, you know, whatever. You would imagine that they would have to have some mental disease in order for that to happen, where somebody believes that they're Batman the whole time they're awake. They really believe it. They're not just playing Batman. They really believe they are Batman. That's a different story. But I just wonder if part of us really does know that we don't have control, but we've still got to behave as if we do have control to be seen as normal. I wonder. We presume at Liberation Unleashed that people really believe they've got control, and we're going to help them discover that they haven't. But I wonder if what we're doing is simply exposing what's there all the time. I don't know. Just a thought. Yeah.
What about playing the character of a seeker?
What was the first words? Playing the character of a seeker?
What's about it?
What about somebody playing a character of a seeker? Well, I mean, you know, one of the realizations I had when I woke up was that there are a lot of positives in seeing myself as a seeker, because seekers are good people, aren't they? They're really good people, you know, and they're well, variations of that.
And the character, because I see the seeking energy is more like self-loathing or
Yeah.
it's like, why would someone play the character or of hating themselves? Like,
Yes.
they want to get rid of themselves. It seems.
So that might apply to some people, and I guess this is where we start to get into individual differences, you know. So if a person really believes themselves to be not good in some way, then by playing the role of a seeker and believing that that's what they are, they're a seeker, that may be one way of avoiding what they really think about themselves. Now, I don't know that that's always the case, but that's a possibility for some people, maybe.
Well, in my story, I was a very dedicated spiritual seeker. I was very committed to it, very strongly.
So you were obsessed too, were you?
Was a maniac, maybe it's a better word. Obsessive, too small.
Yeah.
Yeah, and when this collapsed, I find myself with so much sadness and confusion and so much I, I, very, very difficult emotions just come up. And I could see that because I was holding inside this body, there was so much discomfort, so much sadness, so much suffering for me, but just there that I was seeking the world, right? In activities, in friends, in movies, sex, drug, party, traveling, work. I mean, everything the world had to offer, I did it. And when those things didn't work, well, you are left with spirituality or religion, so that's what I did. I started seeking something else, which I thought it was spiritual. And I get into spirituality, and it was my my last hope, my last hope to run away from my from my emotional pain and my suffering and my hate and my rage and everything. And when this was taken out of my life also, I saw, I saw this, everything in me. It was very, very hard. So for me, all of this seeking, it, it's a survival mechanism. We the we feel things that are too much for us when we are baby or child, and we don't know what to do with them. So we learn to go into the mind and to ask thoughts how to resolve things. And thoughts give us options, give us techniques to resolve, but it never works. So we are trying to find happiness, but because we try to find it with the thoughts, with the tools that thoughts give us, this concept, we never actually find it. So seeking is very good. Seeking is this natural impulse to peace, to find wholeness. But we start this quest in concept, in the conceptual realm, and there's nothing to find. So that's why we really have to go below. But when we go below, we touch all of this emotional mess. So it's kind of it's kind of a balance. But that's why a lot of spirituality is therapy. Really. If we're honest with ourselves, most of spirituality is therapy, because if you don't have all of this emotion, repressed emotion, trauma, and despair, I mean, thought is not that bad. What's the problem? What's the problem with life? But when you are in despair, when you feel emotion, when you are really charged, this is where difficulties arise.
I feel
So
like the message of spirituality gave me this impression of it's all my fault. Maybe this is the conditioning of Christianity, like Adam and Eve going out of the Garden of Eden. It's like I'm choosing the separation by a will, or it's my fault that I'm identifying with every thought that comes to my mind. It's like I'm choosing the separation, and it's on me
Yeah.
that I stop doing that.
yeah, it's on you.
And
But it's not the you that this is very interesting what you are bringing on, because it is your responsibility, but the you is not Rami's.
Don't know.
Uh-huh. You see, this is what I was speaking about, different level or concession level. If you dream, for example, when you go to dream and you have a dream, for example, I go to dream now, right? I am in, let's say I'm in Paris, right? And I'm dreaming that I am in Bali. So I'm in Paris, I fall asleep and I woke up in Bali, right? So let's say that the one who is sleeping in Paris, it's called David, and the one which is in Bali, it's called Robert, right? So Robert wake up and this is my dream. I'm in Bali, I'm dreaming, right? So someone come to me and say, Robert, all of you suffering, it's your fault. Because I'm identified as Robert, as this individual, I will say, oh, it's my fault, it's my responsibility, everything is my responsibility. But the message is not to Robert, the message is to the one who is sleeping, the one within which everything is happening, within which all character is happening. The dreamer, the awareness. So it's true that it is your responsibility, but not in a simple way, not in the way that you choose ice cream or you choose to go out or to stay home. It's not that simple. It's delicate because people come from a lot of different angles, and some people just say there is no responsibility at all. No one is responsible, just awareness, and everything is fine. So just chill. And some other approach this responsibility, like you are responsible as this awareness, and both are true. That's why some people can say there is no choice and there is no control, and 5 minutes after they say, okay, but the way you respond to your belief, you can choose the way you respond to stuff. Yeah, but you say I have no control, and now I can control the way I respond. So but this is just, both are true. It depends where the question come from in the moment, because transmission is not linear, and is not conceptual. So really, and the deepest has nothing to do with what you understand, what you don't understand. You look confused, and I think it's good. The more confused you look, at some point you will say, you know what, just stop with all of this. Let me alone.
For me, I feel like that most of these pointers is being translated or filtered in different way, that it's like my habitual reaction to life is avoidant, is being passive, is being pushing away, not holding on. And it's like this message of surrender or no control. It's so beautiful to me. Like, I love this because this is what my ego does, in its own way. So I feel like these messages just go over my head. They don't land somewhere. And I don't know what could be like, what angle could work with this mind.
It is
But
working.
yeah, first it is working. But I have the same habits of avoidance. Drive my partner crazy because she's the opposite. She like fighting. but I prefer running away than having a fight. I prefer postpone the fight for days. I have this tendency that, you know, if I have a problem, I just don't watch my phone, you know, and later, tomorrow. So yeah, I have this behavior, but what is interesting is to be gentle with ourselves and to see that behind his behavior implies that there is someone, but it's just a pattern, you know, it's just, you know, like there is some plants, like you touch and they close, you know, like lotus open in the morning and close at night. It's a pattern, it's a behavior, but that doesn't mean that it's intentional or it's a choice. It's just the way the flower works is to open when it's sun and close when it's dark, you know. So everybody have different patterns. The energy kind of get together in a certain way, and this comes from patterns. So your pattern is to avoid, and so please just be gentle with yourself, and maybe it will last all your life, and this is not your problem. What can be a good angle should be to see that what you really avoid it's sensation and emotion. It's not really the situation or people. So get back into to understand that what you are avoiding, it's emotion and sensation, and those are inside yourself. And the good news is like you can still avoid everything, like, you know, avoid everything, but and at the same time you can feel your emotion. And you will see that you cannot avoid sensation and emotion. It's impossible.
When you said that a lot of the stuff that we're talking about comes natural to you, it's because it suits your character, your personality. Just surrender, for example, was a really good example. And what we're really talking about is much more subtle than just that word. Right? So we have that word surrender, but it could be interpreted as resignation. And so somebody who operates primarily as a victim would see the word surrender meaning resignation. When I use the word surrender, it's not at all like resignation. It's totally different. What I see it as is an active invitation to bring it on, whatever it is. It's like, and it's also that the mood of it, the mood of the words that say, and it's obvious that there is no avoidance of this. So therefore, I'm really happy to see whatever turns up. Well, that's a totally different kind of surrender to the surrender of the victim, where it's just resignation. So here's what we're talking about. We're talking about shifting you from a resigned kind of surrender to an active, welcoming, inviting kind of surrender. So the subtle difference between the same word, but a subtle difference between in the way that we approach it. So the fact that your personality really does lend itself to this stuff brilliantly, but you still see it as a negative. So, you know, you're still just on the wrong side of the description of what it means. Well, the wrong side's the wrong way to put it too, but you know, yeah. So we're only looking for a subtle shift. We're not a huge thing. You're out there looking for a big one. to fix things, to change things for you. But the problem is that you're looking over the top of, you're looking past it when it's really right here. And you can't see it. You can't focus on it right here because you're focused out there.
It's a little bit like gravity. What Vince said. Like, for example, no one kind of know what is gravity because we are born in it. You are your body, your whole human experience is born into gravity, is born into this object, like kind of sensation to go down. The only way to know gravity would be to go into space. And in the absence of gravity, you will say, this is what this thing is for me. But I couldn't see it before because it is just my experience. It's embedded with it. It's not in it. It's with it. It's it. So you like say, Vince. It's more near than near. So we
it's
don't
like
grasp it. We don't.
Yeah, a story that came up here. It's like there's a fish swimming around with other fish, and this fish is
Unknown caller.
excuse me. Keep going without me. I'll just take this call.
What is interesting with surrender is it's not something that you do. It's like control. You don't stop controlling and you don't surrender. Those both movements, it's not something that you do. It's not an action. Like true surrendering is understanding that you cannot avoid anything. Like experience is just in your face, and when you are aware of it, it's already too late. It's already there. So how can you surrender what is already gone? And who is the one who can surrender? This is to say I surrender myself. It has some arrogance in it because it's supposed that you're in control and you can not surrender to life. Like how you think you are that powerful that you can block life, or you can push life away. Really? Well, if you believe that, you will have a lot of surprise because life it's always win. So
you could say it's more like life let go of me. I don't let go of life.
there is nothing to let go. The me, it's really not a problem. Ramis, it's not something to resolve, to eliminate, to change. Ramis, it's an expression of life, like a tiger, like a flower, like a snake, like a scorpion. I love dangerous animal, like poisonous animal, because they are beautiful. They are very dangerous, and somehow this is what they make them beautiful, right? And you can say, and I think everyone states that, no, that a scorpion is horrible, and if it's free there, we can maybe run away. But if it's in a box, in an image, no, this is, look, that's just, this little thing can kill you. It's just amazing. You don't see it. It has some danger and beauty. It's the same with everyone. The serial killer and people who do charity. There is some beauty in their expression. So really, Ramiz and David and Eloise and Jen and Eric and Leonard and Vince are not a problem. Are not something to solve. Well, right now, for example, I feel that David's really perfect and life is really perfect. And I can feel it, but at the same time, I can see in part of my thoughts kind of rebel against it. Just like try to prove, it's not wrong. It's wrong because this, because money, because pain, because this, because yeah, I know, this is there, and this is part of David. This is part of the experience of being David. I can assure you that the thing that I worry about, if I tell you out loud, you maybe laugh. Like, why do you worry about this? It means nothing. But for David, for this pattern, it's very important. Sometimes some people think about peace and everything, but how to make peace in the world, and you think it's a nice idea, and why not? And if we can, it's great. But if you take a shark in the ocean, for example, sharks don't eat humans, right? But the way they communicate, the way they they enter in relationship with you is through the mouth. So they just come to you and just want to say hello. And what is this? But it's not. They're not bad. There's no morality. Not good and bad. It's just hello. But doing hello, they just destroy your body and your life just goes to hell maybe. But it's not good or bad. It's just two different expression meeting and happen what happened. And when human meet cows and chicken, we just eat them as much as we can. And just again, it's just two different patterns meeting.
I watched this episode of a TV show. They were there were zombies, and they were trying to kill the zombies, run away from the zombies, and then at the end, they were bitten by the zombies, and they turned into zombies, and they discovered that the zombies are actually partying and they're singing and having everything is oneness, and they're dancing, and they want to bite people to make them join this party. and then when they were on the other side, the army discovered like a medication, and they were hunting the zombies to cure them, essentially. And it's a funny perspective, because the zombies, they're immortal. Like, why would they eat actually humans?
I think zombie to me, it's really and the reason they're so famous now is because it is the reflection of our almost complete disconnection or forgetfulness of reality, of divine reality. Like if you see a zombie, he do what most people are lost in, just survival mode. They are in survival mode. There is it's a reflection of our disconnection with this layer, with this deep layer of beingness inside of us. So we just wander in life without meaning, just destroying everything without understanding what's happening, without being aware of who we are and what's happening. But it's just a reflection. But I think it's a very good symbol.
Eloise, are you still on time constraints today?
Yeah, I am, Vince, but I'm enjoying what I'm hearing, so I'm kind of dallying. But I might exit. Thank you. See you, folks.
Bye, Eloise.
So Jen, tell us where you're up to on this journey.
I feel like I'm back at the starting blocks a little bit. I guess noticing things that are happening. I remember last time we spoke, I think you suggested to me noticing my relationship with how I feel about things. So what you were just talking about, David, with kind of patterns of behavior. You know, I had something come up today, which is a really typical pattern of behavior for me, which, you know, I'm not very proud of. But I guess it's that recognizing the relationship with that. So if that's just an expression of life and a series of patterns of energy that isn't really to be controlled, it's how my character Jen associates with that pattern of behavior and thinks that it's hers, and that makes her not very good in some way. Right. And so I guess that's kind of where I'm at this stage. Yeah, just it's not that hard for me to notice the way that I think about things, or and kind of breaking it down a wee bit more these days. So recognizing like a feeling of being wound up, say, can turn into a narrative about, you know, whatever the story is, but seeing that those two things are not necessarily the same thing. So yeah, I guess that kind of explains where I am at the moment.
So how do you feel about that? How do you feel about where you are at the moment?
I feel about where I guess I have a sense that whatever happens, or I don't know, the more I've been listening to these messages, the more my ideas about time have become a lot less structured than they used to be. And so I kind of sometimes feel like it's already there, or if at some point in the future, this point now is part of that future space or whatever. I mean, right at the moment, I'm not super bothered about whether I've achieved what I'm supposed to have achieved or not. That's not always the case. Sometimes I feel quite frustrated, or and then other times I you know, feel like I have had moments of there's all sorts of different ways of describing the thing, I guess. And sometimes it's just like flow, isn't it? It's just like when you're not in your head about something, and whatever you're into at the time is just happening.
So I'm intrigued as to why you say you're back at the starting blocks. Let me tell you, you're nowhere near the starting blocks. From what I hear, that's they're a long way back, those starting blocks. But why does it feel like that is for you? What's the story you're believing?
Okay, I guess it was feeling kind of with the conversation that was happening just previously. I guess it was trying to understand it conceptually, you know, and feeling like it was over my head, or and I know that a lot of these transmissions are not to be held in the mind, and not to, you know, it's not for me to try and get my head around it, so to speak, or whatever. So I guess that was kind of why I said that at that point. It felt like I was kind of struggling to take in some of what was being said.
Mm. Yeah, when we talk, we cover huge areas of ground, so to speak, you know, like, and yeah, particularly David tends to jump way ahead sometimes, you know, and he talks about stuff that yeah. Yeah, so anyway, no, that's right, but we do cover a lot of areas, a lot of ground, but we do it again and again and again in different ways. So yeah, it'll land somewhere sometime. Yeah.
Yeah, cool.
And what we're doing was just going with the flow kind of thing, you know, with whatever comes up, we'll deal with that, so to speak, and all sorts of things come up from different people. Yeah.
And I want to say sorry. Sorry if it's
No.
too conceptual or theory. This is not the way I intended. But I also want to say that the capacity of someone to speak about something doesn't mean that my experience is better or higher than yours. And I think this is not, don't get trapped into this belief. I think it's easier in sports to see this. For example, there is great boxer like Mike Tyson. Just they are great boxer, but they are very bad coach and trainer. And they are great trainer, but they are very bad boxer. But they train very good. So we never know where is people, you know. And it's not because I speak strangely or too much that I am in an amazing space where you are not. So I just wanted to be clear about that.
Yeah, and please, I was also really enjoying what you were saying. So but yeah, I still can really feel myself being really attached to for example, the behavior that happened earlier today, and having, a really strong identification with that thing. And so would your, I don't know, advice be to just keep noticing that and keep or what's the next bit?
Well, what comes to mind here when you say that was that the invitation, the seduction is to get involved in what it was that happened. Right? And what I keep wanting to have people do is to kind of take one step to the right or the left and turn 90 degrees and look at the whole thing from the side. Right? That's what I was meaning about. Well, that's a way of putting what I was saying. What is your relationship with that stuff? So it's not about the stuff that comes up at all. That's just I don't know how to put it. That's the character. That's the carrier of something. But
specifically, you can see that there are two different things. appearing into you. It's correct?
Yeah.
You froze, Vince.
Yeah, sorry about that. My internet dropped out altogether. I'm at my daughter's place and I'm out in the driveway, so I might be a little bit far away. I've just reconnected to my phone, so it seems okay now. Yeah. So sorry about that. Not really. I'm not really sorry. I'm just
No, that's okay. You were about to say about sort of stepping aside.
Yes. So when you say I don't know what I'm feeling about what happened, what I'm saying is forget about that one altogether. It's not about how you feel about what happened. It's about how you feel about what happened.
Yeah. Yep. So I kind of have got to that point of recognizing that how I feel about what happened is I've just plugged my phone in actually. How I feel about what happened is like I'm attached, like I identify with that behavior that I did in, you know, telling myself that you know, isn't a great way to behave. So
Okay. So that's it. You get sucked into the story because it's about the identification, but it's not about the identification. It's about how do you feel about the fact that you think that it's not a great way to be identified. You see what I mean about stepping sideways and turning and looking at it from outside? It's a tricky one, but it's like, so okay, you recognize that there's some identification happening, right? The suck in, the seduction is to go down and say, well, why was I identified with that? But that's really a diversion. That's really leads us away from it, right? Because what it's really about is how do I feel about the fact that I don't want to be identified with that particular thing, right? So what we need to do is yeah, you can say we're getting under it. You know, stepping
so
aside is one way of looking at it. Yeah, go on.
yeah, right. So it's like the aversion. It's like I feel an aversion to having a behavior pattern that is like that.
You got it. Yes. And then when we look at the aversion, right, so it's not about the behavior pattern. It's not about our thing about that. It's the fact that rests on something, that comes out of something. And when we look at the aversion to feeling that, then we're getting like a big step closer to where the juice really is, to what it is that we're, see, because all of this behavior, no matter every bit of identification, it's all distraction or what do you call it? Not distraction, but getting away from. It's getting away from some, what David was referring to earlier, you know, the therapy thing. You know, it's all getting away from something we don't want to be, something we feel is there, some monster in a box that we've never really looked at, because every time we lift the lid up just a little bit, the growls that come out make us frightened and we shut the lid again. So we never ever get to see what that monster really is. But it's when we do open the lid and put a light in there, it turns out that it's really insignificant. It's not nothing, but until we look at it, it's going to be a big, scary monster. So we avoid it. We keep away from it. And our whole behavior, our whole personality, our self is built on keeping away from that monster. So when we
Okay.
identify with anything, it's just another way of keeping away from that. But identification is actually several steps away from it. So when you start looking at your aversion to the identification, your aversion to the idea that it is wrong to identify, we're kind of like 3 steps closer to it.
Okay.
I mean, this could all be seen as just gobbledygook. It's really kind of hard to, it's intricate stuff, isn't it? You know? Yeah. So it's a flavor I'm wanting to get over to you, a flavor of always deeper, always deeper. What we think is the problem is never the problem. It's always underneath that. And when we can see what's underneath that, it's not that either. It's underneath that. Yeah.
Right. Okay. I'm sure that gives me a lot to be getting on with.
Yeah. Well, in the end, all we can do is just sit there with our mouth open and watch what happens.
So is it about like subtle noticing and
Yes.
not about like taking the thing and to my spiritual lab and making spiritual investigation?
Absolutely, because taking that to the lab and investigating it is just another way to keep away from it. So that's one of the things that being a seeker is, it keeps us away from it. Because we are identifying as a seeker. Any identification is keeping us away from what's actually going on.
I think there is also a big confusion with spirituality. There is, for some reason in history, we just started to oppose matter to what is spiritual. Like you say, Ramiz, right? There is Ramiz life and there is a spiritual life where you bring things and you play with it. But there is only you experience. There is not two things different. Your experience is a spiritual experience and is a physical experience also. I mean, whatever you want, but it is just what is here. So you cannot extract something and put it somewhere else so you can explore. And life it's too fast. It's just in your face constantly. So that's why I want to tell you, Jane, when Vince said that you have to go below, that doesn't mean that the object where you go below to disappear. It's just think that you kind of the behavior, the pattern, and the people involved in the behavior and the environment will still be there, probably. But you go below and you touch something else while this is present, and after you go below this, and those two are present, and after you see that it's everything is here. So don't just be aware. Don't expect things to disappear, problem, people, or whatever. They can, but this is not the goal of it. The goal is, yeah, like you see below, but everything is here. I'm right now I'm struggling a lot because I'm moving around the world, and I'm moving every 2 or 3 months with my family, my kid and my partner, and I have a full-time job, and it's exhausting every 2 or 3 months to find a way to live and to get new habits and the food and everything changed constantly. And arriving into the country that I'm now, we didn't have a hotel, and we had difficulty to find hotel, and we were between houses, and I lost cards, so I couldn't pay, and suddenly I felt like, oh, this is a mess, you know. I have to hold everything together. And it was very interesting because, like I said, often we make spirituality like if you start to understand when you wake up or whatever word you use, human problem will disappear, you know. But for me, it's not my experience at all. And I would say it also reminds me that it's a privilege to have a life that allow you to just go, to think about this, to feel this, to just, because when you have no access to food and you don't know where you are going to sleep, the priority change very, very fast. But yeah, just that's why one day I heard a Zen master which said that someone asked him, but where do I begin spirituality? You know, where do I begin this path? And he said, it begins with a hand full of rice. Like you have to have food, you have to have your human needs met, so you can maybe explore more. Otherwise, it's too much. And I'm kind of feeling this now. Like I've too much to worry in my day-to-day life to kind of feel the bliss of God. But what is beautiful is it's His peace is it's present in the midst, in behind the difficulties that I'm having now. And I can see that even if I'm in this process for a long time, there is so much fear coming up still. And now I'm trying to be authentic and to say, okay, there is a lot of fear, there is a lot of distrust, there is a lot of identification, there is a lot of confusion. And okay, I will feel it, you know, I will do my best to find time to make space for that. And it's very difficult when there is fear to feel it, because when I feel an emotion, I am this emotion, you know, and the mind, it's so good to make the reason of the fear like really, really important, and really like, oh my, you have to do something about it, you know. So there is a right balance between feeling the fear and acting to kind of have a healthy human life. And I just wanted to share this kind of this dance between you know, there is just awareness and perfection at the same time. This seemingly opposite state of, oh, I'm a human being and I have needs and they are important. And what I'm trying to do now is not trying, but what I see is that they are melting more and more together. And I think the spiritual practice or life is to see that there is no distinction between your life as it is, even if you believe it's miserable and painful, or whatever you think it is. It is spiritual. It is a spiritual experience. It's in the sense it is. I'm talking too much again, but I wanted to share something. Yeah.
I was thinking about the distinction between basic need or a sense of lack, and how they can overlap. And also, Vince, once you said that before we can dissolve the ego, there must be like a healthy ego at first. And I was thinking how this might be applied to me. Like, what do I really need now? Do I need spiritual awakening, or there's a need that a basic need that I should focus on, and are those needs real needs, or just sense of lack, and there's an assumption that they will fulfill me somehow, and there's this tendency of like no, I don't need anything. I don't want to need anything. I know nothing will fulfill me, but yeah, I don't know. This is what I'm.
Yeah, I get you. Yeah. Look, I tell you what, it's maybe just my story, but I reckon I've watched your ego get healthier and healthier in the last couple of months, and things have changed. You look different to me in my eyes. So there you go. But that's, you know, we need to look at that in detail if we're interested in it. I mean, we don't really need to look at it at all. Yeah. You know, I have a lot of problems with some words, using some words, like enlightenment, for example, is a word that I don't like. I don't like God either as a word, because so many people have different ideas about what they are, that it's you know, you just about have to write a book about what your own, I have to write a book about what my own understanding of those words are before I can use them. And it's a waste of time, you know. I don't see this as a spiritual thing. We can call it spiritual seeking, but I don't see anything spiritual here at all. What I see is something really practical, down to earth. You know, what I see is what, you know, that what most people call reality is in fact a dream. It's not real at all. You know, that the real world out there is not real. They operate on some fantasy level. The whole world seems to operate on some fantasy level. So to say that this is spiritual, it's quite the opposite. You know, I'm talking about getting real, whatever real is. You know, let's look at what actually goes on. That's real. Where's the spirituality in what's actually going on? Unless you just want to flip it and say, well, it's all very much a divine thing, that what we're really getting at. And I mean, you could see it, you could say it that way too if you want. But yeah, it's see, when you get there, you realize there's nowhere to get. You haven't got anywhere. You haven't shifted. You haven't gone anywhere. All you've done is you've just shaken off a whole. It's like you were buried in autumn leaves or something, you know, and you stand up and shake off the leaves. That's all that we're doing here. When there's nothing spiritual about it. We're just getting rid of the fantasy stuff, or rather not getting rid of it. We're just recognizing it for what it is. Yeah.
Talking about fantasy stuff, I think for a long time, my fantasy about spirituality was like a permanent okayness with everything, you know, that you're always okay with everything. And then I understood that it's never going to be like this, but it's not necessary either, or it's not interesting either. I mean,
Yeah.
um,
Well, see, it's a trick too. You can say, well, what it's really about is being okay with what's not okay at the same time. So there it is. It's not okay, but I'm okay with that being there.
yeah, of course, but you know what I mean.
Yeah. No, we're talking about the same stuff. Yeah.
And that thing, Ramez, that you said about, you know, in order to give up the self, you have to have already had a strong sense of self, or, you know, had your boundaries in place or whatever it is. And do you need to go away and focus on that first? I'm not sure, correct me if I'm wrong, but I have a sense that it's all concurrent, like it's all happening at the same time. And so, yeah, it's not a linear process where you have to go and do this before you can do this next thing. And then when you've finished that, you go on to the next. But it kind of is all in layers, and all of those layers are going along, happening at the same time and back and forth. not at all linear. So what I'm saying is you probably don't need to go away and focus on something else first. I
And
might need to carry on.
I was just going to say, Ramesh, if I thought that you should go away and get some other kind of help first, I would tell you. I don't know how to be dishonest. I wonder if that was dishonest. But anyway, I would tell you. You know, I wouldn't. Because if somebody was really in that state where their ego was so fragile that we couldn't work with them, it would be potentially dangerous to work with them. So I would be saying to them, yeah, go and see a psychologist or find a good psychologist. That's what I'd be saying. And I don't feel that's a path you need to go down at all. No, you're here, you know, you're not getting out of our grasp so easily. But you were very timid when you first turned up here, weren't you?
Yeah.
And I don't see that to the same extent by any means, by a long shot now.
Maybe I don't know if this is just here, only here, because I don't feel the same openness somewhere else. It's
That's the same for me, you know. And I rather imagine it's the same for a lot of people that are here at different times.
Mhm.
It is a particularly safe space to be in where people speak their mind and don't bullshit you.
I would really invite you, Ramis, to investigate the difference between what you consider spiritual, therapeutical, mundane, because there is really no difference. Your experience appear with quality that are always the same, even if they seem different. There's only your experience constantly.
for me, the spirituality is more like investigation of the nature of experience itself, the texture of experience. It's like making zoom about what is it to feel like I'm here, I'm experiencing things. That's all, and it's in this sense, it's distinct from practical life. What to do, where to go. That's the distinction for me.
Mm. As you get better, that's not a good word, but that distinction will start to become less clear. So you'll start to, they'll start to marry up at some point. Like, although I don't, when I go inside and I'm with people in there, I don't talk about this stuff because they're not interested in this stuff. But I don't become a different person. It's just that the focus is different.
It's very interesting, Vince, because you say when I go inside, and I thought, I mean, inside your experience, but I thought, I think you are talking inside the house somewhere.
Yes, because I'm out in the driveway now, and my daughter and my grandson and my wife are in the house.
but, but this is kind of the subtle shift, you know, like after people start to speak and you literally understand something else, like things, it seems subtle at the beginning, but they are the impact is very strong after. Sorry, Vince, I interrupt you, but it was
That's all right.
too
No, I
funny.
don't.
I have
Yeah.
have to say it.
Mm.
I think one thing that is I'm seeing for me, it's falling down, but it's still it's still present sometimes. Is still believe that I can know where I am somehow, in this process. I can invite myself some kind of imaginary steps, and I'm maybe here, and I start to the mindset to because and all of this mess, I think no one have no idea where it is, and what is happening, what it means. All we have, all of us, it's our experience and how we relate to it and how we understand our experience within ourselves. This is the only, I think, what I really find in Elio that was very powerful for me was to see that I am my own authority in my experience, and think this is so powerful to really see that there is no one outside of you that can convince you of anything. You have to agree first, always. They must have an agreement in you to say, oh yeah, this is true. Oh yeah, this is true. Oh no, this is not true. It comes from your system, doesn't come from outside. And I think it's very powerful to see this.
Mm. Something that just came up, my wife just came out and said, "You're cooking, come inside and cook." And because Eric had to go because it's really late where he is, and I'm thinking that next week I'll go an hour earlier than this week. If is that a problem for any of you guys?
Oh, it's okay for me.
Yeah.
Can you
Yeah.
tell me what time you started today? Did I arrive at the beginning, or had you already started?
I think you're only a few minutes later after I started. So it was 4 o'clock my time. You sound like you're in New Zealand, are you?
Yeah. Yep. Yes.
So I think gee, I don't know. I think New Zealand is
No, so
half an hour
yeah,
different.
no, we're 2 hours behind.
Oh, okay.
2 hours in front, I should say.
Right.
Good. So that's all right with me. So are you thinking of starting at 3 next?
Yes. If I go 3
Okay.
o'clock, yeah. I think that might suit a few people in their time zones as well.
Yeah, it's good.
That will also get me. I'll be finished then before my wife starts hassling me to come and cook tea. Yeah.
Yeah, and speaking of tea, I need to go and have tea as well.
Well, thank you. Yeah, that was good, Jen. Good to see you.
Thank you, Jenna.
Yeah, thank you all as well. Good to see you all again, and yeah, look forward to seeing you next time.
Yeah, good stuff. Yeah.
Cheers. Bye.
Bye.
So before I go, I'd like to hear how things are for you, Lennart.
Yeah, actually, I tried to be short. I had a very interesting experience yesterday because actually I wanted to do a hike onto a volcano, and I took a bus in the morning, but then they wouldn't let me hike up the volcano because they said that I didn't have equipment and I should not go alone. So my plan didn't really work out. And so I was just strolling around on the street, and I saw on Google Maps that there were some waterfalls to look at. And then I met a woman on the street, and she asked me where I wanted to go. And then I told her, and she joined me. But then she really joined me to those waterfalls, which was like a hike of 4 hours. So we spent all the time together. And actually, some hours later, I found out that actually I was not allowed to go alone either. So she went with me so I could see the waterfall. But then it was not only a hike, it was like a sacred place or something like that. So we had to pass like a lot of rituals until we arrived to the biggest waterfall, and that was like very cool. Like this woman was in a burqa, so I saw only her eyes and nothing else. And she was super funny and friendly. And I mean, maybe I understood like 20% of what she was talking because I'm not so fluent in Indonesian. But still, I really enjoyed the time with her. And yeah, then also you had to wash yourself under some waterfalls and drink the water and like do a lot of rituals. And it was, for me, it was really enjoyable because I saw it like something very playful. It somehow woke up the child in me, and it was like, okay, what's coming next? To tell me how the game works. And okay, and she was praying all the time. I mean, for her, I think it was like something really religious. And um, yeah, but then afterwards, when we went down the mountains again, and it was like very abundant tropical nature, I was super amazed by that. And there was a guy, I don't know if it was like the park ranger, and he asked me for money, and after and I gave him the money, and after that, in my mind there was this kind of idea, okay, but what if she will ask me money for everything afterwards? And then I could really observe this, and I thought like, okay, but what role has this money thing now, you know? I mean, and it was nearly like everything had like a very mystical touch and very magical. And when we went down and I started to think about this money thing, it was all like puff, as if the magic had gone. And then I was really investigating like, but what does it have to do with one another? I mean, even if she would ask me for money afterwards, that would not necessarily mean that this was all fake, you know? I mean, that the friendliness and so on. So then it was, I mean, it didn't really dominate me because I could see, okay, this is just like a story in your mind now. It was rather interesting that it had to do something with betrayal or something like that, because that's kind of a childhood trauma that I could understand a
Yep.
bit more with the time. But then the interesting thing anyway was why is it so related to money? You know, I mean, I don't really understand what this is all about. So then I also thought, yeah, but I mean, if I gave her money for it in the end, how would that change my experience? I mean,
Mm.
why would I interpret it as something not as beautiful as it was actually? So yeah. Um, but in the end, it didn't happen like this either. I mean, she even accompanied she joined me to the hotel, and we had some hours more of walking and talking, well, trying to talk, but it was kind of, yeah, it's not only this situation, it's also that I noticed, for example, I mean, this is quite a while ago, but in when I was still in Argentina and I was looking for Buddhist groups, for example. There were, for example, some Zen groups that I wrote to them. And the first answer I got was, okay, first you have to transfer this amount of money, and then we will indicate you the time and the place. And then I always thought like, no, I will never go to this, I mean, group, you know. I always thought like, no, spirituality, okay, I can give a donation, but if the first contact is like, please do this yeah, I don't know. Also, for example, yeah, I don't know if it's maybe also German culture, because it's really a taboo to talk about money, although everybody thinks about money, you know.
Mm,
So, but I think it's also a bit, I was educated like this by my parents, like when you, for example, when you are making friends with somebody and it's not yet so established, this contact, would you say like, ah, can you lend me $300 or something?
mm,
Probably I wouldn't do it, you know. I
mm,
mean,
mm.
because I would not like the other person to think that I'm interested more in money than in the friendship or something like that. But I
Yeah,
think
yeah.
this has everything. Yeah, but this is also like mundane and spiritual, friendship and money. I mean,
Mm.
yeah,
Mm.
I'm
It's
not
an interesting one.
I'm not quite able yet to sort it all out, but yeah.
Well, I would say straight away, you know, you'll never sort it out. We can't
Mm,
understand somebody else's attitude now, and then there's cultural things too. Of course, in Indonesia, you know,
mm,
everybody's living pretty much everybody is living at a survival level when it comes to
of
money. You know?
course, yeah.
They don't get good
No,
wages
and
or anything.
I was talking about sorting out my own relationship with
Yes,
money.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, well, just as you'll never understand what somebody else's attitude is towards it, um,
Mm,
even if they tell you it's not necessarily going to be right,
mm,
it may well be that you'll never understand your own attitude
mm.
towards it. But I don't know.
Yeah, because
Maybe it doesn't matter.
I also understood that in the past, or not such a very far past, um, I didn't really spend so much money, or I didn't allow myself to spend a lot of money for myself because, yeah, I think it's like this kind of belief that mm, in the past I had like very depressive modes or times. And I think there is still a bit of fear that it might happen again and that I'm not able to function, you know, for example, not be able to go to work. And that's why I mean, I understood this kind of wrong belief that because it's really bullshit because
Yeah.
yeah.
It's a tricky one. I mean, part of my experience at the moment is as being old. You know,
Mm,
I bought lunch today, and a simple Turkish um, meal with
mhm,
baklava, cost me $24.
mm,
And I remember quite distinctly buying a hamburger for like
mhm,
$6. Right now,
mhm,
a hamburger cost me $15 or $20.
mm,
So just as time and inflation and everything changes, what
mhm,
things cost, I can remember what things cost, but I can't remember the value of things.
mm,
You know,
mhm,
so when people talk about um, the cost of a house today is 8 times somebody's yearly income, when back when I was young, it used to be 3 times somebody's yearly income. That puts it into a better context. But
mhm,
but when I think about the actual money, I mean, a house I sold after 10 years of marriage, that house I bought for $6,000 and sold it for $30,000. That same house today
Mhm.
be worth $700,000. That exact
Mm.
same house. Right. So how do we get our mind around the way these things, what they really mean, how they've changed? And
Yeah.
all that? I think it's just something that we just kind of go, it doesn't matter. we can't worry about it. If I feel bad about paying $25 for lunch, what am I doing? I'm just inducing suffering, aren't I?
Yeah, I mean, money is also something like Santa Claus, actually. But
Exactly. The whole thing is made up.
Yes.
That's true. Yes. Yeah. 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 That's interesting, isn't it? Yes. All right. Well, that's it there. So it still
Bit
sounds to
more
me like
tricky
you're in a
than
good
Santa
place.
Claus, maybe.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think there is really something that I can feel also, you know, like paying for a therapist or paying for someone who help you in an emotional way. I can understand the resistance. Like it is for the money that he's helping me. It is for this. It is I can understand this kind of what's happening there. But I also feel that if someone like the value of people have there is time, there is value in the people who take time for you, you know. So the question you ask that if someone is with me for a time and he asks me money for this time, is the quality of his presence the same or not? This is a very interesting question. I mean, it's worth asking. I mean, at least.
Mm.
I was quite happy that it was not about money at all afterwards. But I was wondering, like, what will happen? I mean, will I be pissed off, or will I be
Yeah.
will I evaluate the situation differently, or
Yeah.
will I think like, oh, I was so naive, or something like that, you know?
So what you said earlier, that was just really spot on. And that was that I've had this experience. And then if they ask me for money at the end, will that mean that I've had a different experience? Of course,
No,
it
actually
wouldn't.
not.
It would mean the same experience. But will I view it differently? Sure, that might happen. So you can, right up until the moment before they ask you for money, you can be feeling a certain way about it. And then when they ask you for money, you can suddenly feel something entirely different. But it hasn't changed what you felt right up to that moment, only what from then on. Okay, I'm going to go and cook tea. Thank you, everybody.
Bye. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you all.
Bye.